We got to get past phobias, because what happens is, as Christians, we create phobias out of everything. And so I want to begin with that we treat people, we treat our friends the same. It's called equality. Okay, whether they're black, brown, whether they're Asian, whether they are Native American, whether they are gay, straight, right? We treat people the same. There's not an imbalanced gospel where because somebody is, then we have to kind of treat them as. And I take that from James chapter 2. James, the brother of Jesus, verses 1-4. He says, hey, if somebody comes in and they're different from you, are we to treat them right? If somebody comes in with greater means, do we say, hey, you sit over there? If somebody comes in and they're of lesser means, do we say, you over there, right? You don't belong up front. So that's the first thing I like to say, because we almost have to unlearn our feelings towards somebody who is gay or lesbian, right? Or LGBTQ plus, right? So that's the first thing I like to address, is that we have to learn to teach people to treat people with compassion. Okay, compassion, empathy, however you want to say it, with love as a Christian, because the question is, how do I reach, as a Christian teenager, my unsaved, right, gay or lesbian friend? Well, you can't treat them any different than anybody else. So the empathy, right? Second, you need to do what we're doing right now. These kinds of series, these kinds of videos, these kinds of resources and books. You've got to educate yourself. Okay, don't just go off what somebody has told you. Okay, you need to educate yourself. That's why you're doing this series. That's why we do these videos. That's why we study and show ourselves approved, rightly handling the gospel, right? Especially as young people. You know, your generation, Gen Z, only 33% of Christian kids in the church can name half of the 10 commandments. Okay, so it's a theology problem, this number 2 area, in dealing with our gay and lesbian friends. If you don't understand theology, then you're going to approach those relationships from a cultural standpoint and not a scriptural standpoint. You see what I'm saying there? That's so important, because sometimes we get into these conversations, arguments, whatever you want to call them, right? These conversations from a cultural standpoint, because we're so comfortable with the cultural, but we're not handling these conversations from a scriptural perspective, because we're not solid scripturally. So the second area in reaching my friends, I have to have a good understanding of the scriptures. Okay, and we'll get into that. I'm sure I can give you some specifics with that as we get further into these questions. But just in reaching them, you have to make sure that the empathy, number 1, right? That love relationship, number 1, I'm not treating them any different than anybody else. And then that the scriptural ethic. So I like to call it empathy, number 1, and then ethic, number 2. The ethic is the principles of the scriptures. The ethic is not your own personal cultural background. The ethic is the scriptural approach that I have. So the first one is the empathetic approach, right? Love. The second one is the ethic approach. Where are my ethics? It's the scriptures, understanding the scriptures. The last area is maybe I don't put these in any order of importance, necessarily, because you'll notice I put the empathy and the love one first, because Christ said they will know that we are Christians by our love. So that's first. And then that ethic one and the principle, I mean, that's important too. But I think this third one is something that is a strength for teenagers. And that's why I like to talk about this specifically. When you ask the question, how do I reach my friends, okay, who are not? You have to understand how important your example is. And that's that third E, right? You have the empathy, you have the ethic, and you have the example. And this is what I mean by that. How am I going to model Christianity? From a truth perspective, not a relational perspective. That first area, empathy and love, that's the relational, okay? But how am I going to model this third area as an example to my friends in the truth area? Like I like to say the first area is the grace. You know, we build our relationship with people with grace, but then we build the ethic, number 2. Then what do we do with that ethic when all of a sudden now we're in a conversation and I have to bring both truth and grace into this, right? So the third area is the truth. If you can see those in different ways, and you know, we'll put some graphics on there and you'll see that, but it's really simple to see. Empathy, ethic, and example. Okay, empathy, ethic, and example. And the example is, how well can I state the truth that I've studied and the things that I believe in and do it in love? Okay. Some of you know and have followed me. My younger brother is gay. He's 3 years younger than me. He's very popular in politics. He is, he's on Fox News all the time, right? He's a public figure in the Republican Party. He's the highest ranking gay Republican. My brother is in politics, but also he grew up in the church. He grew up in this and chose the gay lifestyle later on in his life, after college even. And now he's become quite famous for that. He's known for that, right? But that hasn't changed our relationship. Hasn't changed our relationship at all. We've known as a family for 20 years or so, right? But that hasn't changed our relationship, because our example is that we're going to be empathetic. We're going to be ethical in the relationship, right? Have the principle of what we believe, and we're going to example that. Now, my brother believes that he's born again. My brother believes he's a worshiper. He attends church. He reads the scriptures, right? We just depart in this area, and that's okay. I was with him just recently here, now that the election's on and all that's going on, right? And there's no brokenness in our relationship. We disagree in an area of our principles, but we don't disagree in the area of our relationship. Okay. And so I want to share, listen, I'm not just giving you smoke. Okay. I'm telling you the truth because I live this. I live this on a regular basis. I have to deal with this on a regular basis. And so do you. I know you do as a teenager. So you can balance just kind of close this question out. You can balance the empathy and the grace in a relationship, the ethic, where you're building your truth and your understanding of this topic, so you can talk about it, in a constructive way, in a truthful way, a powerful way. Truth is powerful. And then finally, by that example and how I am relational. And that's in my truth. So the grace, number 1, the truth building in that number 2, and then, how I act that out in my relationship. So hopefully you'll see that flow with empathy, ethic, and example. That's